That bittersweet time is upon us that we've all been waiting for. As Brother Roderick's last talk for us, our final concluding talk for our congregation, that we've been looking forward to it. The title is, What Kind of Friend Are You? Let's turn our attention to Brother Roderick's.
What a wonderful thing it is to have a friend. It's been said that a friendship redoubleth joys and cutteth griefs in half. That's true, isn't it? For example, have you ever been watching a nice movie, maybe you're home alone, and you're enjoying it, and then something funny happens and you respond, oh. It's not nearly as much fun by yourself, is it? And if you've ever gone through a situation where maybe you've lost someone, and you had a good friend who just stuck by you and saw you through that, then you know it wasn't nearly half as bad as it could have been. So friendship does double joys and cut griefs in half. Another proverb says that there is a friend that is sticking closer than a brother. Imagine that a person who at one time had been a complete stranger to us could enter our life and become closer to us than our own sister or a brother. So do you have a good friend? Who are your friends? What kind of a friend are you? No doubt you will find the answer to the first two questions in your answer to the third. What kind of a friend are you? The patriarch Abraham had a good friend. The Bible comments on this in the book of James, chapter 2, and verse 23. Would you be so kind as to look this up with me, friends? James 2:23. And as we read it, please pay close attention to exactly what is being said here. James 2:23. It says, "And the scripture was fulfilled, which says, Abraham put faith in Jehovah, and it was counted to him as righteousness, and he came to be called Jehovah's friend." So you notice it doesn't say here that Jehovah was Abraham's friend, does it? Doesn't say that. Although that no doubt was true. But what it says here is that Jehovah considered Abraham to be his friend. And that's an important distinction. Why? Well, because of the way it is with important persons. Just look at an example of that. Let's say a man from Manorville is off somewhere on vacation or a business trip, and here he is in the lobby of this nice hotel, and all of a sudden a group of men come in. They fan out through the place, and soon he finds himself face to face with the President of the United States, George W. Bush. Well, the two men establish eye contact, and a friendly conversation ensues. Man from Manorville tells him his name. The president says, "Well, where are you from?" "I'm from Manorville, New York." The president says, "Oh, Manorville, that's on Long Island, isn't it?" And the man says, "Yeah, how did you know that?" He says, I went to Starbucks there once." Well, a little conversation goes back and forth, and then just as quickly as it begins, it ends, and the president is whisked off and on his way to his appointment. But what do you think that man from Manorville is going to talk about when he gets back home? What do you think he's going to tell his friends? What do you think he's going to tell his family? What do you think he's going to tell the fellows at work about? About that conversation that he had with his friend, George W. Bush. 10 years from now, he may still be talking about it. But if you were to see George W. Bush 10 years from now and ask him about so-and-so from Manorville, New York, do you think he'll remember him? So what's the point? The point is, important people attract would-be friends. And who's more important than our Creator, Jehovah God? There are a lot of people that call Jehovah friend. The question is, like Abraham, does Jehovah consider us to be his friend? And the answer to that comes in the question, what kind of a friend are you? One thing that attracts people to others we find in Proverbs chapter 14 and verse 20. Proverbs 14:20. You see, it says, even to his fellow man, one who is of little means is an object of hatred. But now notice the latter part. But many are the friends of the rich person. Is Jehovah rich? Through the prophet Haggai, Jehovah says, the silver is mine and the gold is mine. Imagine that. All the silver there is. All the gold there is. The gold in the mines and the mountains and the oceans of the earth. The gold you might have on your finger or neck. It's not yours, it's his. He is rich. Rich persons do attract a lot of friends. Donald Trump has a lot of friends. But does Donald Trump have even one real friend? One that just likes him for himself? I don't know. But maybe neither does Donald Trump. Because wealth attracts friends. Another thing that attracts friends is power. Some people become very powerful. They rise in a position in certain organizations. It could be anything from a country to a social organization, even to a crime organization or a terrorist group. And some of these people become so powerful that they could even have someone put to death. Now that's power, isn't it? But you want to see real power? Look at Psalm 36 and verse 9. Of Jehovah, under inspiration, David writes this. Psalm 36:9. For with you is the source of life. By light from you we can see light. With Jehovah is the source of life. So there may be some men and women who could have another person put to death, and Jehovah certainly has the right to take away the gift of life. But more than that, he's the originator of the gift of life. And if we were to die, he's the person that could bring us back to life. Do you agree that's power? So we have to think, friends, what kind of a friend are we to this rich and powerful person, Jehovah? What kind of a friend should we be to him? What's our motive in worshiping him? Is it just to get everlasting life? Is it just to have better family relationships? Is it just to have the privilege of associating with his lovely people? Now, it's true, Jehovah does give us all of these gifts. But frankly, none of them should be our reason for worshiping him. None of them. But no, wait a minute, somebody will say. That's exactly what the witnesses put in front of me when I first came into contact with the truth. They told me that I could live forever. If I became one of Jehovah's Witnesses and I said, that sounds good, sign me up. Is it right for Jehovah's Witnesses to put in front of people the idea that you can live forever? Well, it is. Because we have been commissioned to preach the good news of the kingdom, right? And inherent in that is the thought of living forever in paradise. So you may have studied in a book that was called The Truth That Leads to Eternal Life. Or maybe one that was called You Can Live Forever in Paradise on Earth. Or Knowledge That Leads to Everlasting Life. It's part of our message, and we put it in front of people. But the idea is that as we continue to take in knowledge about Jehovah, somewhere along the line it's supposed to dawn on us that this person, Jehovah, is the most beautiful, attractive person we have ever known. And we're supposed to fall in love with him. So our motive changes, right? It's life at first, but it's love at last. Life in the beginning, love in the end. Now, if that's our motive for serving Jehovah, it's unbreakable. If it's just life, then we're in jeopardy of losing that relationship with Jehovah. Now it's obvious that Eve's relationship with Jehovah was that kind. What kind? I call it a bargain relationship. What do we mean by that? Well, let's say you have a car, and it's been a pretty good car, and lately, though, it's been costing you a little money for this and a little money for that, but it's still got a lot of miles left in it. But you're kind of tired of it. So you go out and you start checking the ads, and you sort of see this car you like, and you go to the dealer and you make a deal, and you buy the car. Now you got to get rid of your old car. So maybe you get one of these car swapper magazines, and you get the application, and then you get a piece of paper and you write down as many things as you can truthfully say about this thing that make it sound good. And then maybe you take a picture of it and you send this in, and before long your ad appears and thousands of people see it. Now, of all those thousands, there are a few that are interested enough to make a phone call. And of those, maybe there's one or two that are interested enough to come and see it, and perhaps one of them makes a counter offer. You come back with a third, and you meet in the middle, and now you shake hands. You've got a bargain. The next day, that person comes back with a certified check. You write out a little bill of sale. You give him the keys. He gives you the check. He gets in the car and drives off, and as he does, you're waving in his rearview mirror, and as you wave, you think, I hope I never see you again. Why? It's not that you dislike him, but you know if you see him again, it's probably going to cost you money. So you hope that's it. Well, do you love him? Well, we might say, yes, I love him like I love all mankind, but my relationship with him is just a bargain. Can't be like that with Jehovah. Jehovah, you have life. You're the source of life. Now I want life. You want people to serve you. I'm capable of doing that. So I'll serve you. You give me everlasting life. That's a very breakable relationship as far as Satan is concerned. Now, Eve, think about it. She had everything we're looking forward to, right? She had perfection. Sisters, think about this. She had a perfect husband. She was living in paradise. And do you ever think about it? She was living everlasting life. She was not immortal, but she was living everlasting life. How do you break the integrity of a person who has all that? Turns out it wasn't hard. Satan just offered her something better. At least it sounded better. You can be like God. And she took it. Why? It was a better bargain. Picture a woman, and she's married to a man. Now, her husband is just a good old average Joe. Nothing special about him, just a good average guy. Now, at work, there's another man that takes an interest in her. And maybe they work closely. And he begins to have feelings for her. And so he finds a way to make known to her he's interested in her. What is she going to do? Well, that depends on her relationship with her average Joe. If all she has with him is a bargain, I wanted to get married. Nobody else asked. So he asked me. I looked at him. Well, I could live with that. So she married him. If that's all she has, she may be inclined, as some women are, to, in effect, trade up. Right? This man maybe is better looking than her husband. Maybe he makes more money than her husband. Maybe he's better educated than her husband. Maybe he's more attentive, at least at the moment, than her husband. She may be inclined to trade. But what if she just loves her average Joe? She just loves the guy. And now this other guy shows her that he's interested. What's going to happen? Stop right there. I'm sure you're a very nice person. Stop right there. I am not interested. I am married and I love my husband. Stop. Isn't that what Eve should have done? And if she had loved Jehovah, that's what she would have done. Now, we had in our lesson today a nice example of someone who had that kind of relationship with Jehovah, and that was Joseph with Potiphar's wife. Let's just look at one verse, Genesis chapter 39, latter part of verse 9 in particular. Genesis 39. Here he's explaining to Potiphar's wife his loyalty to her husband in the early part of the verse. He says, "There is no one greater in this house than I am, and he has not withheld from me anything at all except you, because you are his wife. So how could I commit this great badness," and notice this, "and actually sin against God?" Here was the bottom line. The reason he would not do this is because it would hurt his relationship with his God. And he just loved Jehovah. And he was not going to fall for that. We have to be the same way, brothers and sisters. So we want to think about that. What's our relationship with Jehovah like? Is it a bargain? Are we just in this thing to get life? Or do we truly love him? It was life at first, but it's love at last. Now, one mark of a true friend we find in the book of Proverbs in chapter 17 and verse 17. Proverbs 17:17. You notice it says, do you have it all right? Proverbs 17:17. A true companion is loving all the time, and is a brother that is born for when there is distress. So here, God's word tells us that a real friend is there for us all the time. In fact, when we have distress or problems, he's even better. He's like a brother born for that moment. So again, we have to think about us and Jehovah. Let me just illustrate this first. Let's say you go through a bad experience. Maybe you're in a hospital bed for a few weeks. And if you've ever had that, you know how that feels. And there was a friend of yours that never showed up. And later on, after you're up and about, you're out on the street and you see this person. He says, "Hey, listen, how you feeling?" "Oh, I'm better now." "Oh, I'm glad to hear that. By the way, I'm sorry I didn't make it to the hospital, but you know, I hate those places." Or maybe you went through the loss of a loved one and you were there in that line at the funeral home with people coming by and offering their condolences. You went through that whole funeral home experience and one of your friends was never there. A few weeks later you see him on the street and he says, "Hey, I'm so sorry about your loss. How you doing?" "I'm doing okay." "Sorry I didn't go to the funeral home, but you know, I hate those places." No kidding. Who doesn't hate the funeral home or the hospital? We were never built to ever have to go to one. We were never supposed to build them. Who wants to be where people are besides themselves with grief? Who wants to be where people are sick, where children are hurt, where people are dying? But I'll tell you this, if he had been a real friend, he would have put himself through that for you. He would have been the brother who was born for when there is distress. Now with Jehovah, there is distress now. Not distress in the sense that somehow things have spiraled out of his control. Not at all. But think about it. His name has been forgotten by his own children. His sovereignty over this earth and its inhabitants is ignored. His laws are scorned. His existence is considered a joke by some. Are you a brother that is rallying to Jehovah's side now? Are you proud to stand up as one of Jehovah's Witnesses? Proud to identify yourself? Proud to speak up in his behalf? What kind of a friend are you? Believe me, Jehovah is watching us now and seeing what kind of friend we are during this time when what we say and what we do really means so much. Now, let's talk about the nature of our relationship with Jehovah. Let's go to 1 John chapter 5 and verse 3. 1 John 5:3. Here we're told, for this is what the love of God means, that we observe his commandments. And yet his commandments are not burdensome. Jesus said something similar to this. He said, you are my friends. Remember that? If you do what I am commanding you. I bet you don't have too many friends that say that to you. I'll be your friend if you do everything I command. Well, see, there's only a couple of persons in our life that would have that ability, and one is God himself, and the other is the Son of God. So here, the love of God means, or friendship with God, that we observe his commandments. So when we read verses like this, we come to understand the nature of our relationship with Jehovah. He's our friend, but he's not our buddy. He's our friend, but he's not our pal. He's our friend, but he's not our peer. He's Almighty God. He's our Creator. We, in effect, come to him on our knees, begging to have a relationship with him, begging him to accept us as his friends. Oh. Well, what about these commands of Jehovah? What's an example of one of these commands and our response to it? Let's go to the book of Hebrews in chapter 10. Hebrews 10. And we'll read verses 24 and 25. We're told, and let us consider one another to incite to love and fine works, not forsaking the gathering of ourselves together, as some have the custom, but encouraging one another, and all the more so as you behold the day drawing near. So, we know this, right? We are commanded to gather together. The question is, how do you respond to that command? What kind of a friend are you? Do we respond, well, you know, I want to live in the new world, so I better get to most of the meetings? If we respond that way to this command to gather together, then what does that say about a relationship with Jehovah? Is it love or is it a bargain? See? How does a real friend of God respond to the command to be there with his people when they're worshiping him? We don't have to guess about that because something in our Bible reading this week helps us. Let's go to Psalm 84. Psalm 84, and we'll read verses 1 through 4. Now notice the word choice in this psalm. The psalmist writes, how lovely your grand tabernacle is, O Jehovah of armies. My soul has yearned and also pined away for the courtyards of Jehovah. My own heart and my very flesh cry out joyfully to the living God. Even the bird itself has found a house, and the swallow a nest for herself, where she has put her young ones. Your grand altar, O Jehovah of armies, my King and my God. Happy are those dwelling in your house. They still keep on praising you. Now you notice in verses 1 and 2 the words that he uses. He says that the tabernacle is lovely. Lovely, he says. And he says that his soul has yearned for it. And he uses the expression pined away. Then he says his heart cries out joyfully. Don't these sound like the words that a heartsick lover would use in a love letter when he's been separated from the object of his affection? And he says, my soul yearns for you. I'm pining away without you. How lovely you are. See, these are words that come from the heart. This is a man who loved the worship of his God. And it's obvious he loved his God. Now, it was nicely brought out Tuesday night, this situation of this man. He was a non-priestly Levite, and as such, he had the privilege to serve 1 week every 6 months in the temple area. But now he has to go home. And on his way out, he sees a bird's nest, and this nest is made by a swallow. Swallows love to make a cup-shaped nest out of mud pellets, and they like to put them up under the eaves of buildings. And apparently, here's one in the temple area. It's interesting. This is Solomon's temple. But later on, when Herod built his version of the temple, he put something up so the birds couldn't nest in the temple area. But here's this Levite. He's just spent a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful 7 days there with his brothers where Jehovah's being worshipped. He has to go home, and now he spots this bird's nest. And he thinks to himself, how do you like that? I have to go home, and this bird gets to live in Jehovah's temple. And he's jealous of the bird. That's how a lover of Jehovah responds to the worship. That's how we should feel about this building and what takes place here. Love. We love our Creator. Now, if you feel that way, brothers and sisters, you know what? We'll never have to talk to you about numbers, meeting averages, things like that, because it won't be your head moving you here. It'll be your heart. It won't be a bargain. It won't be life. It will be just love for your Creator and for His children, your fellow brothers and sisters. Now, with any friendship, it's very vital to keep the lines of communication open in order for the friendship to be able to breathe and to grow. And Jehovah's done a wonderful thing as far as our communication with Him is concerned. He gives us prayer. So we want to think about prayer for a few minutes. William Shakespeare said something very noteworthy on the subject of prayer. He said this in the play Hamlet. He said, my words fly up. My thoughts remain below. Words without thought never to heaven go. That's true, isn't it? Do you ever say a prayer without thinking about it? Fact is, if we have, we haven't said a prayer. No more than, some religions, they put a little prayer inside of a wheel. They call it a prayer wheel. And they spin that thing. And they think that every time it goes around, they've said a prayer. Ooh, I'm getting somewhere now. No. We have to be aware of this. And all of us do. But especially us brothers. Now, why especially us brothers? Only because with us it shows more. Jesus gave us the model prayer. Now we all know He didn't give us that prayer for us to recite it, right? Because He says it just before the prayer, not to recite. But the point is, it is a model. That means that we're going to regularly be praying about the same things. And it is true, our prayers are about the same things. And they're, right? We say them often. What could be a trap there? If we're always praying about the same things, it could become easy to start to use the same words. And then if we do that for a while, then we are able to generate those words because they become like a sound in our head without generating any thought. And there's the danger. And for us brothers, sometimes, let's be honest, brothers get up here and they pray, and it's the same thing. Jehovah God, Heavenly Father, thank you very much. And I'm not making fun. I'm just saying this is a danger. Now, you may be a sister, and it may not show on you, but you could do the same thing. So let us be resolved to pray from the heart and not by heart. Words without thought never to heaven go. So that's how we talk to Jehovah. We're talking to Him. How do we listen? Well, we come here to listen. That's a good thing. When we read the Bible and meditate on it, when we study and meditate on it, we're listening. Another way we get to listen to Jehovah is when we get some counsel. It's a way that He reaches out to us to give us something that will help us to grow, something to help us to become the person that He sees that we can become if we will listen. Now we can say, it was an imperfect person that offered us that counsel, And that, no doubt, is true. But frankly, if we're waiting for the perfect person to come along and give us counsel and correct us and discipline us, when it happens, we're not going to like it. Now's the time to make the improvements that are necessary. Now, one of the greatest gifts that our friend Jehovah has given to us, we find right here in one another, our brothers and sisters. You ever notice, though, we call one another friends? In fact, we use that as a form of address. The friends, right? The friends were very supportive of our Kingdom Hall maintenance project last Saturday afternoon, we'll say, right? The friends this, the friends that. You ever use that expression? Why do we call one another the friends? Anyone ever thought on that? Why do we call one another the friends? Sister Garrick?
We're in close association with each other. We have a friendship. We have things in common that we share. So that makes a friendship, we think.
That's right. Anyone else? Brother Loy?
We also know that we don't have any friendship with the world. So that means that our friends would be in the truth.
We're stuck with one another, right, Brother Loy? That's good. Anyone else? Sister, that's with an H, Headington.
We know that all of us share the commandments, all of Jehovah's commandments. And when we congregate together, we are each other's friends.
Yes. Brother Lynch?
We have common ground. We got the same, we're on the same line of thought, so there's common ground established there. The only way you can have a friend is to have something in common.
Yes. These are all true. It's another reason. Let's go to 3 John verse 14. Notice how John closes that little letter. 3 John 14. He says, "But I am hoping to see you directly, and we shall speak face to face. May you have peace. The friends send you their greetings. Give my greetings to the friends by name." So 2,000 years ago, Jehovah's people were calling one another the friends. And for all the reasons that we've discussed, including our mutual friendship with Jehovah. So it's very right that we see one another that way. But now, are the friends really your friend? It was Ralph Waldo Emerson who said the oft-misquoted statement, "The only way to have a friend is to be one," said Emerson. So we might ask the question of ourselves, am I acting like a friend to the friends? Some complain, the friends aren't friendly. It's quite a statement, isn't it? Once in a while, someone will come to the circuit overseer and grumble, the friends never have me over. Now, if you were the circuit overseer and someone in the congregation said that to you, what question would come to your mind to ask? Right? When's the last time you had someone over to you? Oh, I tried that once. It didn't work. Well, we think of the good scriptural advice. Keep doing what is fine, for in due season we will reap if we don't tire out. Keep doing the right thing for the right reason. Lead by your example, and you'll be blessed for it. Have the friends disappointed you? Or has maybe one of the friends disappointed you? If you're in that situation right now, you may be on the cusp of a beautiful friendship. Now, why do we say that? Well, it's been our observation that friendships often grow in 3 stages. The first stage we could call the honeymoon. That's when you meet someone and they just seem perfect. Maybe you're a brother and you're working at the convention and there's another guy working there, and the first day you start to joke back and forth and you get into some heavier conversations, and you can see he's a spiritual man. He's very kind with other people, and you just like the guy. Second day you have a wonderful time with him. That night you talk to your wife. The third day you extend an invitation. Hey, listen, what are you and your family doing a week from Saturday? We'd love to have you over. Well, see, you find them to be an attractive person, so you want to get to know them, and this is what we call the honeymoon. It's just great. What a wonderful person. I'm glad I know him. Now this inevitably leads to stage 2 of the friendship, which we can call the crisis. Now, we always knew this person wasn't perfect, but in stage 2 we get to see specifically how their imperfection manifests itself. So if it's a sister, maybe you're a sister and you think, whew, she's got a mean streak. Didn't see that before. Or maybe it's a brother and you think, he sure is cheap. Cheap. So now you know. So what are you going to do about it? You know, sadly, some friends go through the whole congregation with just steps 1 and 2. Step 1, step 2, you're out. 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 Now, you don't even get 3 strikes in this game. You only get 2. But now you got to be careful, right? Now you're going to go out in service. You got to kind of prearrange your car group because you don't want to be with these people. You're not so comfortable with them. You can only sit in a certain section of the Kingdom Hall because that's where your peeps sit, you know, comfortable with them. How do you get past stage 2? How do you get past the crisis? It's by doing something the Apostle Peter recommends. Let's go to 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 8. 1 Peter 4:8. You notice he says, above all things, have intense love for one another, because love covers a multitude of sins. So, you know what I think of when I read this scripture? You're not going to believe it. Sheetrock. Do you ever hang sheetrock? I have. Not professionally, but I have. When you hang sheetrock, of course, now the sheetrock that I've used is just 4x8. So you have your 4x8 sheet, so that means you have a lot of seams. Besides that, sometimes I always used a hammer when I hung sheetrock. You miss, or you hit that nail a little too deep, and now you have a puck, maybe a few of them there. Once in a while when you're carrying it, or someone else carried a sheetrock, they drop it and that corner gets crunched. So you look at it, it's really kind of a mess. So what do? Well, after taping, you get out the mud, right? And you fill in all those imperfections with that mud, and then you sand it, and then you light sand it. Then you can put a coat of paint on that wall, and you run your eye down it, and what? It looks perfect. It's not perfect, but it looks perfect because you covered over all the imperfections. That's what Peter's saying, but what he's saying to use is love. So step 1, step 2, the crisis, cover it over with love. And then we get to the third stage of the friendship, which is true friendship. It's a friendship that has been tested and it has stood because of our ability to show love. And the beautiful thing about this is while we're doing it for someone else, no doubt somebody in this group is doing it for us, just overlooking the imperfection. And that's so beautiful in Jehovah's eyes. We have to be that kind of a friend to one another. Now, Pat and I want you to know that we consider you to be our dear friends. And I look at your faces, and each one of you, I know the personality behind it now, which I didn't the first time we visited. And we hope you consider us to be your friend, your friends as well. To be honest, we hate to leave you. This is the part of this work that we do not like, but it is an inevitability. We're going to Massachusetts Circuit number 3. That's around the Berkshires, the middle part of the state. If you've ever been to Amherst or Springfield for district convention, that's the area we're going to. We will have 15 congregations in Massachusetts. We'll have 1 down just to the south in Connecticut. We'll have 3 up to the northwest in Vermont and 2 up to the northeast in New Hampshire. So 21 congregations in all. Now, you have Brother and Sister Sheeter coming in, and they'll be serving you starting in September. Leonard Sheeter and his wife Hilka, we know that you will enjoy them. Just want to say a couple of things about them and you. We just learned recently who they are, and this will be their first circuit assignment. And sometimes when I mention that, the friends say, silly things like, oh, well, we'll train him, or we'll, whatever. But think about it. This couple are not new in the truth. Nor is he, or nor are they new pioneers. They're very experienced in the truth and as pioneers. And nor is he a new elder. So they will have a lot to offer you. No doubt you will teach them things just as you have taught Pat and I things. And we appreciate that. But remember, you have to respect them so that they can be of service to you. They're representing the faithful slave in our area. And I'd like to make a suggestion about them, and that is get to know them right away. It seems very often during our last visit, some dear, sweet, little shy person will come to us and say, oh, Brother and Sister Roderick, and not just us, any traveling couple, Brother and Sister, we've enjoyed your visits, and I'm a little bit shy, but I didn't want you to leave without saying hello, and so they say hello and goodbye. And if you were going to do that today, I say, come on, it's fine. But don't do that with the Sheeters. When I was a boy, we had been begging my parents for a dog. We had a dog, and it died. And so we wanted another one. But my mother wasn't so sure, because it was her experience that we would always promise her everything as far as that dog was concerned, but after a while it would wear off and we would get distracted, and she ended up doing, am I right, Rod? She ended up doing a lot of the work. So that's where we were. This was summertime, and I happened to wake up very early this one morning, and I heard the door opening downstairs. It was my father. He was a truck driver. He'd been away a couple of days, and now he was coming home. So I ran downstairs to open the door for him, and when I opened the door, this huge boxer walked in front of my father named Duke. And we have a dog. So I went upstairs, and I woke everybody up, and we all came down, and all of us were petting the dog, and thank you, Dad, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we were so happy. And then as the day went on, my two brothers, the middle one and the younger one, went off and did the things that boys do in the summertime around the neighborhood, playing and this and that. But my older brother, who's sitting right there, didn't do that. He stayed the whole day with that dog, just talking to him and petting him. See, my parents chained him in the yard, not my brother, the dog. Not that time, anyway. Because back then, dogs used to just roam the neighborhood. They went anywhere. They were like the kids. They just were part of the neighborhood scene. But because he was new, we had to chain him so he would get used to knowing that we were his family now and that this was his home. So Rod spent the whole day just talking to that dog and petting him. And I'm sure that was, we were talking about a time of distress. I'm sure it was a distressful time for that dog. However they think, I don't really know for sure. But they, no doubt, was missing his other masters. And if they had kids, the kids in the area and everything. And he's in this strange place with these strange people. And one person thought to stay with him. And the reason I'm telling you this is after that dog was always partial to him. So when the Sheeters come in, or any circuit couple, they're going to be lonely. When we're away in Massachusetts, we're going to be missing you. What will the Sheeters be missing? Well, their friends, their family. Maybe they had a dog, and they don't have it anymore. Their home. There's going to be a lot. And you can do a lot to make them feel loved and comfortable, just like you have for us. But do it right away. Have them over, Get on the list for the meal, work with them in service, get to know them, and they will love you and they will serve you well. Now, over the past 3 years, I've offered you much commendation, and you have deserved it. And over that time, I've offered you a little bit of counsel, and you have very graciously accepted it. And we're so happy to see the state that this congregation is in, and we have every hope for continued growth for you. You know, I figured it out, and I have stood before you like this 112 times during the last 3 years. Can you believe that? 112 times. We've talked with you about being zealous and thorough in the ministry. We've talked with you about showing respect for God's faithful and discreet slave. We've talked about reaching out for pioneer service if that's within our power, as housewives or retirees or young people or whatever our circumstance. We've talked about being, well, we just did, regular here at the meetings, loyal when it comes to meeting attendance, about keeping Jehovah's moral standards, about staying balanced, about helping our children to grow spiritually, and our young people reaching out for noble things rather than the ignoble, prideful, ambitious things of the world. And we hope that you've accepted this in the spirit in which it's been given, because all we want and all we've ever wanted is for you to become, just give me a second, everything you're capable of being as a spiritual man or a spiritual woman or a spiritual young person. So, as we say goodbye to you, we want to assure you of our deep love for you. And we want to encourage you to continue to grow in your relationship with our greatest friend of all, our loving God. And you know who that is, Jehovah. So certainly it has been a delight for us to serve you, brothers and sisters, and our love will stay with you. And we hope that our paths cross again and again, this side and the other side of Armageddon. Right back at you.